So by now, it's not new news that the case is officially over. That's right. We got the big update earlier over the week, and it was the announcement of the Second Circuit approving the joint stipulation of dismissal. So the case is now officially over. Is it a big time to celebrate? Well, I do believe so, right? Because again, if we're thinking about how long this took to really wrap up, it's overdue, right? It's been overdue for quite some time. I personally think that this should have been wrapped up a very long time ago. The biggest thing that I've always said on this channel is that this was one huge obstacle, not just for Ripple, not just for XRP, but also for holders of XRP. We should have been celebrating, back in 2021. We should have been celebrating, you know, throughout 2021 all the way to now, because what we should have saw was major adoption of XRP, major adoption of Ripple, growth around both of them. We should have saw the entire market really waking up to XRP as well. I mean, we seriously had so much put on pause because of this lawsuit, and now we are finally getting past it. But we gotta look at the pros around this as well. For an example, the SEC gave us an incredible buy opportunity. They gave us a very long time to accumulate XRP at some significant lows. On top of that, during this entire time, Ripple continued to expand outside of the US. We saw adoption around XRP outside of the US as well growing. And think about everything that's been put in place around crypto now to support what Ripple and even XRP are doing and what they are, right? And what I mean by that is, well, Ripple is a fully compliant and legitimate crypto-based company and network technically, that's been fully focused on institutional grade adoption and institutional grade crypto use cases, which at this point, institutional players are getting the green light across the board through major regulatory discussions and moves. And XRP has always been that utility-based project for these types of use cases. So again, if we think about it, yeah, sure, was there a lot of obstacles in place for us throughout the years? Was 2021 kind of a wash for XRP? Sure, it was. But I feel like today the market is really ripe for XRP's takeover, because for that entire time, we took the time to become that legitimate utility-based, institutional focused powerhouse of a crypto project. And Ripple, they did the same as a crypto-based company. So we're finally putting this behind us and we're looking forward on, and the future looks very bright for both Ripple and XRP. And talking about that, we are mainly looking at one big thing now that this case is put behind us, and that's the ETFs. So we have over here today, Grayscale files S1 for XRP ETF. Now, this was very interesting because, again, this was quickly after we got the news that the case was finished. This is also proof that, guess what? This was a big obstacle. Yes, this was holding a lot of things back. Now, this is a big update because it's forcing the hand of the SEC to decide on this. At the same exact time that it wasn't just Grayscale, but it was a bunch of XRP ETF filings being updated by issuers today, almost certainly due to feedback from the SEC. Good sign, but also mostly expected. And we can see the alert across the board. We have Grayscale, Bitwise, Wisdom Tree, 21 Shares, Franklin, Coin Shares, and Canary XRP as well. Again, just major updates across the board for ETF filings for XRP, which we've been talking about this being that big push. Wall Street obviously wants their XRP ETFs approved. They know how big this is going to be. They know how successful it's going to be as well. They also know how much money this will generate them. But on top of that, we also got a big update from Nate Gerolshi regarding this. So S1 amendments rolling in today on spot XRP ETFs. He did highlight all of them. He said, highly notable to see them cluster like this. A very good sign in my opinion. And yeah, the fact that we're getting a cluster like this, just like I said, is forcing the hand of the SEC to decide, are we going to approve this or not? And I think that this is great. Putting pressure on the SEC like this right after a major decision, for example, to drop the case and dismiss it officially, this is a good sign that we could very well have an XRP ETF approved, and I mean a spot ETF approved in the US in a very quick manner. What's the ETA? I would argue by the end of September. I mean, they have to be forced here. Now, the deadlines are somewhere around like the end of October. So even if we have to wait until October, I'm fine with it. But on top of this, we also did get a big update from Johnny Dean. He said, what happens when you fight back and help get the government's, boot off the neck of an industry? 3 years ago, the SEC Gov argued XRP itself was illegal. SEC lawyers argued that because XRP represented the efforts of Ripple, all XRP tokens constituted unregistered securities. Now, fast forward to today, and XRP spot ETFs are on their way to approval. The SEC deadlines for each approval, like I said, around October. Grayscale, 21 shares, Bitwise, CoinShares, Canary, Wisdom Tree, all around like October 18th through the 25th. Following the Bitcoin spot ETF example, the best case scenario for XRP ETFs would mean trading begins within 1 to 5 days after the SEC approval, and this is business days, so weekends don't include it. Following the Ethereum spot ETF example, it would be 2 months after approval. With Ethereum ETFs, the SEC wanted additional disclosures regarding S1 filings. Bottom line, as Judge Torres ruled in part due to XRP holders intervening in the case, as amnesty, the judge cited in her ruling. XRP itself is not a security. Without that ruling, these spot ETFs possibly never happen. And yeah, that is true. So again, this is proof that when you fight back, you truly can win in a huge way. And that's exactly what's happening here now for XRP and for XRP holders. And I'm very excited about what's going to happen with these ETFs. Even if we have to wait a bit, even if they're going to be delayed a bit, just like the Ethereum ETFs as well, I still think that this is going to be huge for XRP because, again, think about the demand that this will create if they are spot-based ETFs, because the spot ones are the main focus. The future ones do not matter. They don't impact the actual price of the underlying asset or the demand, but the spot ones do. We already know that they've been very successful so far for, Bitcoin and Ethereum. I just don't see how they wouldn't be successful for XRP as well. XRP has been, in the last 12 months, one of the largest gainers in the top 100. It's outperformed Bitcoin and Ethereum in terms of the top in terms of the 12-month period. And it's just been a very dominant crypto project so far this cycle, and I still think that continues on. And if we're thinking about regulatory discussions, we're thinking about tokenization, stablecoin use cases, the entire market's waking up to what some of these utility-based projects have been focused on for years. So again, everything that's happening around the environment for crypto really kind of supports XRP's case even more. So the ETFs, that's just another big catalyst around everything happening for this market that supports projects like XRP. So I'm very excited about this. We are going to keep our eyes on some of these dates because we are inching closer to October than ever before. So again, we are fully focused on that. Now, on top of that, I do want to go over this post here from Diep Son because he did put out a post regarding the Ripple versus SEC case. So here we have, as soon as the Ripple versus SEC case closes, Grayscale files for an XRP ETF. That speaks volumes. Big institutions were waiting for this moment to make their move on XRP. Don't be surprised when more XRP announcements start rolling in days, weeks, months, and even decades ahead. And yeah, because again, a lot of these big players were waiting for this moment. It's not just Grayscale. It's every single ETF filer, right? They were waiting for this moment, and now they are flooding in with these updates. They are waiting patiently. They want to force the hand of the SEC because they want to get this out there as fast as possible. And yes, there's going to be a ton of more XRP announcements coming in the next few days, weeks, and months ahead, even decades, because if we're thinking about this, there's been so much weight put on this case. I don't think people realize it, but this case was a huge obstacle. I know that a lot of people said that it was just an excuse, that, it didn't really matter, that nobody cared about it. But let's just think about BlackRock, right? Let's go back to this post here from May 21st. Smoke Dog put it out. It was regarding why BlackRock is holding off on an XRP ETF filing. BlackRock isn't moving on an XRP ETF yet, even though XRP is one of the most in-demand altcoins for an ETF. Here's why. Short-term regulatory uncertainty. The SEC still hasn't fully defined whether XRP and other crypto assets are securities or commodities. Even though courts have ruled XRP isn't a security, the SEC keeps delaying ETF decisions. Approvals are now pushed into June or October of this year. BlackRock is waiting for full regulatory clarity before making a move. Now, if we're thinking about that, we know that the Clarity Act is set to be passed through by the end of this year. That's going to be regulatory clarity for the entire space. But now, with this case being wrapped up for XRP, we basically have regulatory clarity for XRP. So this is one of these big obstacles holding BlackRock back from an XRP ETF filing out of the way. Number 2 was new institutional grade derivatives. Big investors use futures to hedge and manage risk. Bitcoin and Ethereum have high volume CME futures. XRP launched CME futures on May 19th of this year with $19 million in volume on day one. It's a major milestone, but the XRP futures market is still new. Institutions tend to wait for consistent activity and deeper liquidity before getting involved. Now, we have heard from CME that, so far the XRP futures launch has been very successful. It's been growing. The demand has been there. But I don't think that it's there just as much as like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we're still kind of waiting to see how successful that can be, towards the end of this year. And that could also be a big deciding factor for BlackRock to file for an XRP ETF. On top of that, liquidity not strong enough yet. XRP has strong market depth and is one of the top altcoins in that category, but ETFs require high and stable liquidity to handle large inflows and outflows. The SEC watches this closely. BlackRock may be waiting for XRP's liquidity to mature further. Now, I don't think that this is a big problem. I think that XRP is one of the most liquid altcoins in this market, and I actually think that it's just on par with Ethereum. So I don't think that this is a big concern. But focus on what is already working. BlackRock's Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs are pulling in massive inflows. Right now, BlackRock is focused on scaling what is already performing, which could definitely be the case. They don't want to really, add another thing into the mixture to compete with these two. And then, of course, competitive timing. XRP and Solana are leading ETF application activity. BlackRock may be watching how the SEC handles these filings before jumping in. They're waiting for stronger demand and a better regulatory environment. BlackRock is simply waiting. They are waiting for clearer rules, deeper market maturity, and more sustained demand before making a calculated move. But now, with this update, I do think that this kind of changes everything. And I think that this will put pressure on even BlackRock, just like it has for the SEC. Now, I do want to go back to that post from Diep Son because, again, he said big institutions were waiting for this moment. Now, I do agree with him. In fact, we already know that some of the big institutional players already spoke out before. We go back to 2021, where we have JP Morgan. If Ripple wins SEC lawsuit, XRP is poised for significant adoption. Now, where did this post come from? Well, it came from an article that was written back in 2021. The main thing here was the fact that, if we see this win, then it's going to be very successful for Ripple and for XRP. Now, a lot of fake news has been published out there. This could have definitely been a fake news article. However, we also heard from Bank of America that they will want to partner with Ripple for on-demand liquidity services after the XRP lawsuit finishes. Regardless of if these are real or not, regardless of if we can trust these articles, it doesn't matter, right? Again, the main focus here is that institutional players will now have a, big vote of confidence to tap into Ripple to utilize XRP-based products because, again, there's no regulatory uncertainty. They don't have to worry about, are they using a security? Are they going to be added to this, list of players that are utilizing something like XRP that's still in the middle of a lawsuit? Like, they don't have to worry about anything now. So I do agree that institutional players were still waiting on the sidelines, regardless of if these posts are fake. Because again, we can't trust everything that we read and see. I still think that this is kind of true. I think that a lot of these big banks that are already working with Ripple that we know of, that are confirmed, I think that they're going to be looking at this announcement, and I think that they're going to wonder, maybe now is the time to tap in. Maybe now is the time to get, a hold of Ripple and start talking about the future with, XRP involved, because it just makes a lot of sense. But we can't say for certain if that's going to be the case. I still think that we see a lot more big announcements over the coming weeks and months ahead. So far, this year has been a very big year for Ripple. They've been on an acquiring, spree. They've been acquiring so many big players like Hidden Road and even Rail. And I think that that's just a start. And with ROUSD traction really picking up,